Hey YouTube, today we have the repair of two System 7 MPU and driver combinations. I'm going to be doing this using the Siegecraft electronic test suite. And I will just kind of go over the setup here. You need to have your MPU and your driver board connected to that 40 pin to get this to boot up. You can't just do this board by itself because it needs to check these PIAs. But this test equipment, there's a little display tester. Has a little screen on there that'll give you all 4 player displays as well as the credit and ball and play. This is the switch door, or the switch inputs from your coin door. So your manual up, and then your advance, and then your high score reset. There's also, since it's System 7, there's another switch there for the memory protect. And then there is a switch input tester here. This can be used on other systems as long as the wiring harnesses are changed out. Now, so you could use this on 3 to 7 like I'm doing. You have to double check if 9 and 11, Williams System 9 and 11 are the same. You can probably even go up to WPC with these. And all those details are on Siegecraft Electronics website. And then this is the lamp matrix tester, so just an 8x8 LED grid. Again, check your wiring for System 3 to 7. It's going to be different for 9 to 11 and then WPC. But you also need to, at least on this setup, you need to give the lamps power because this needs 5 volts, at least 5 volts to run. So I've hooked the jumper to the lamp matrix power, which is typically 18 volts if it's in a machine, but I've just jumped it off of the 5 volt test point from the MPU. That way this will get powered on. With this disconnected, you won't have anything output there. And then to test the solenoids, there's these little LED jumper blocks. And again, we need to power these with 5 volts, so I grabbed that from the solenoid ground over here, or not the solenoid ground, sorry, the power input, so 5 volts off of the power input connector. And then each side of this has kind of an in and an out, so then the 5 volts is powering this one, but then it jumps out to the next block, and then it jumps out to the next block. So these ones are going to be the regular solenoids, and then the last two set up here are for the special solenoid. So this is the same as the LED block here, but then these are just dip switches that you can select, and then this is the same as triggering the special solenoids, which are this section, the same as triggering it on the play field. Now System 7 does cycle these in the, at least this ROM set does. This is a ROM set for Jungle Lord. It does cycle the special solenoids, but then you could also manually trigger them here. And then also 2 of these would be for the flipper relay contacts as well. So it's kind of the general setup here. It looks like a mess, but it's actually pretty straightforward. So then to power this up, we need to give it ground on the first 3 positions, and then 5 volts on the next 2. I just have these 2 random hooked up for a logic probe, and then on the very last one you need positive 12. And then I get that just from a regular switching power supply from an arcade game. So then all we got to do is plug it in, power it on, and then you'll hear the relay click, the flipper relay click. And then you'll notice on this board that there is no battery. And I don't have NVRAM on this, so it's going to come up in audit mode. So the 2503 would be on player 1. We actually have to, it says Williams 6-digit, so this can do 6-digit games or 7-digit. Jungle Lord would be a 7-digit game. So this is what it would look like. Player 1 would say 2503, so that's the game identification number. And then the 04 doesn't mean that it's a 4-player game. That's a dig at Dylan. It means that you're in the audit menu. And then we just need to get out of that. So a couple ways to do it. If it was in a game, this is where you would power it on and off real quick and it should come up. With games that have the memory protect on the coin door though, you need to have the coin door open to do that. So we could do that, or another way to do it is just to hit the MPU test switch here, and we should see this flash to 0 and these flash and then go out if it has properly passed its own self-check. And then with that, we're back into attract mode. So this Jungle Lord evidently only displays 1 high score too instead of the top 4. Then another indication that we are indeed in attract mode is that our lamp matrix will be moving. And then this would be our coin lockout relay. So that's going to be on whenever we're in attract mode. No other relays or no other solenoids are on. And then we could actually go through the test menu on this as well. And that's where this little test block comes in. The switch that's on the right, it moves up and down. That's your manual up or manual down. This would be your memory protect, and then this is the advanced button. So one thing we can show is with the memory protect, if it was the coin door is closed, and I always forget, I think this means that the coin door is closed, but when we do the MPU test, we should not get a 0. This is saying, if you looked up the code for System 7, I think that means that there's a problem with the memory protect, or it means that you're trying to fiddle with the boards when the coin door is closed, which usually isn't going to happen on route. So if we go back and change that so that the coin door is now open and we redo it, then it should come back and then be back into attract mode. So this one is your memory protect. And then I might have this backwards again. I'm going to slide this down. I think that's where we want to go. Because when we hit this, if the if the flipper relay clicks, then we know that we're in the diagnostic side of the menu instead of the audit. Yeah, so now that clicked on, you can tell that our flippers are active. And then we can't hit the advanced button, or we could to manually step through all the digits, or we could change the manual up or down, and then it's going to cycle automatically. So you can see that all of our digits are working. I have noticed with this tester, sometimes there is like a fractional delay. You can kind of see it on player 3 there with one or two digits. That I think is unique to this testing display. If you put it in a game, it doesn't have that lag. You kind of see that third digit's a little bit off, but I think that's just a setup with that, and it doesn't really do it on the actual pinball hardware. So that's the display test. This would be the sound test, and we don't have anything to test that right now, so it goes through 6 or 7 different triggers. But the way that you could test this on a System 7 is these bottom pins on this top connector that's not on System 6. These are it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. No, 0, 1 through 4. And every time that comes up, that would be grounding that pin. So when it says 0, it's going to be the bottom pin goes to ground, 1, the second pin goes to ground, 2, the third, and then it keeps going. I think there's 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 for triggers. So we don't have a soundboard hooked up, but you can at least see that PIA is syncing that to ground to trigger a sound. So then the third press of the button gets us into our lamp test. So all of them should be going. System 7 doesn't have an individual lamp test. It's just all would flash. And then this is going to be, the second one is going to be all of our solenoids. You have to kind of mind the jumper wires. It's going to go through for an 8, 9, 10, 11. Oh, I was off frame there. 14, 16. It'll turn this one off now for that coin lockout. And then it'll eventually go to our special solenoids as well. And then there'll be a few that aren't fired just because they're not used, and then you'll hear the flipper relay click and they'll go over again. So then for the switch inputs, another kind of confusing thing is solenoid 1 isn't the leftmost one, and 2 the next one. It doesn't go linear through here. You'd have to look at the pin outs because the solenoids aren't on, solenoid 1 isn't on pin 1, solenoid 2 is not on pin 2 kind of thing. So they kind of jump around a little bit. But another thing that we can do with the special solenoids is, and again, there's only 6 special solenoids, but there's 10 switches here. There's also 10 LEDs on here, so 2 of these aren't used because there's only 8 pins on all these connectors. But we can go through and trigger. I'll just turn them all on and you can see, trying to keep them on. So then there would be our 2 right ones are the flipper, and then the other 6 are the special solenoids being triggered from these switches. And we can just go and click them all off. But again, you have to look at the schematics because the first one's not special solenoid number 1, the second one's not special solenoid number 2 kind of thing. A little confusing, but you can figure it out. So the next step, this would be our switch matrix test. And then on here, this tester, this is all the columns and all the rows. So that means that if you pushed one button, nothing's going to happen because the switch matrix needs to read the intersection of a column and a row. So if we did the first 2, then that should be switch number 1. And then column 1 and row 2 should be switch 2 and keep going. So you have to hit 2 at a time to test them all. And then also keep in mind that there's 8 by 8, so 64 total, but on the particular game you're doing, it might not have all 64. So I can't remember which one was the last reported one on here. We see other testers, or other people doing test videos saying the last switch reported. So this one does go through column 6. I think this one ends at around 50. Yeah, so the last one on this one is 50, and then this is